Hey nerds. So, I'm going to talk about Alex O'Connor again, YouTube philosopher, who is nice and mustachy in this video, talking with Francis Collins, I believe, who's a Christian, about beauty. And they, basically get into an interesting conversation about the concept of beauty and how slippery of a concept it can be and how complex it can be and how much it can change depending on your definition, depending on different people's definitions. And different kinds of art that express beauty, like paintings and music and poetry, and they get into an interesting, not really conversation, but more of a debate about it. So I think this is interesting to get into here.
When I was an atheist or an agnostic, the moments where I had those glimpses of something that made me worried that I missed out were those surprising moments of the numinous. For me, oftentimes music, the second movement of Beethoven's Third Symphony, the funeral march, and that C minor, incredibly
Yes, the classical music is so beautiful.
aching music that brings tears to your eyes, even though you didn't expect it. And somehow that aching longing comes into mind, and you're like, there's something here I'm supposed to be part of more often, but it's gone about as soon as you grasp it.
You can get that profound feeling from music. Like there are songs that you like so much that they feel like more of an experience than a song because you like it so much. And yeah, there are many different kinds of art that evoke that sort of deep emotion like that, which some people connect to the divine, but you don't need to. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have this materialistic, scientific, reductionistic argument for that explains beauty, and it's just like chemical reactions and stuff in response to our environment. That's certainly a piece of it. I don't know whether divinity is a piece of it, but there are some aspects of emotions that are difficult to explain, which means that we don't know the reason behind them. But it's interesting to think about why they might be there. Although it's kind of an oversimplification to think that God did it, but in the same way, it's kind of an oversimplification to just say that science did it too.
Or something beautiful in terms of art, although it's often for me, the music. Does that happen to you to get those glimpses of, C.S. Lewis calls that joy, that we're surprised by joy, the name of his book. Do you get those, and what do they mean?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought this up again, because I remember earlier when you used the word longing, and I've always identified the feeling of beauty as something a bit like longing in a way that's also, okay, so I think that the word beauty is one of the most like promiscuous terms in the English language. I think that like we refer to a bunch of different, like categorically different things and kinds of things as beautiful. I think that music is beautiful. I think my wife is beautiful. I think that meal was beautiful. We're meaning totally different things, right? And so we have to sort of...
something we hear, something we see that evokes a certain emotion, something that we eat that makes us feel a certain way because we appreciate the meal so much. Those are all really different ways of understanding what beauty can be depending on what we're calling beautiful.
We have to sort of hyper-focus here, right? So like with music, for example, it is an incredible mystery that you can like play some notes on a keyboard that vibrates the air in such a way as to bring up very specific emotions in a person. That's incredible. And like, yeah,
You can say scientifically how these things happen in terms of the sound, but not the reason behind why they evoke these particular emotions. And that doesn't mean God did it, but it's really like art is a really interesting anomaly of existence that various philosophers have talked about ad nauseum throughout existence, not the least of which is Nietzsche, among various others, right?
Experience that, right? And I feel very lucky to have experienced that. With painting and art, it took a long time. I used to sort of not really enjoy it or get it. A lot of it had to do with contextualizing the art and learning a little bit about why it was painted, when it was painted, what the world was like, what this bit of art would have meant there and then. That now I'm a sucker for art and galleries. I think it's great, and I've tried to pay attention to like
That sort of thing, I get that argument, but I can see both sides of that situation too. That if you need to like really research the context of something to enjoy it, is it really actually enjoyable on its own? Or if you have to research all this outside context, does it not, like, is it actually all it's cracked up to be? But I totally also get that if you study the relevant context of something more, you can appreciate it more. Like if you know more about the life of Nietzsche, you can get a better appreciation of the way he approaches concepts. And he had like, he famously went crazy, and then and he was in a mental institution, and his sister was a Nazi supporter, edited his final work, The Will to Power, to make it sound favorable to Hitler's, who he could use it in his speeches. And those are far from the only interesting aspects of his life. And then there are fantasy series like the Malazan series, who a lot of people have heard of, which is widely regarded as the most complex and confusing fantasy series even among huge fantasy nerds. And then you can watch I like watching the Blu-ray commentary in the Matrix trilogy with the Philosopher's commentary with Cornel West and Ken Wilber. And all of these things help me appreciate these more, but that's because I really love them and I'm a nerd. So you could say that if you really appreciate something, you can delve into it more deeply to appreciate the beauty. But again, at the same time, if you need to do that, is it as beautiful, or is something that's as beautiful on its own, is that superior? I think it really depends on the context, and there are pros and cons to both, which is why beauty is such a complex concept, philosophically speaking.
What is going on? What's happening there, right?
What's this say to you?
And I wonder. I've often felt like longing seems to fulfill the bill, at least in some of those cases, because
Longing for what?
if you look at that's the question, right?
Yeah.
That's the question. If you look at, and this is why, by the way, I understand why people use this argument from beauty to God, because like, what is this thing that you're longing for? Well, maybe it's something like some kind of intrinsic maximum of beauty. I find that quite difficult to cognize. I find that difficult to sort of look at a painting and a bit of music and a really good pizza. I think the thing that they all sort of have in common that's pulling me to if I sort of push those together, I sort of get a God-looking figure. Maybe though.
Weird.
Maybe though. I don't know. But I do think that if you pay attention to someone's facial expression, right? When you walk around the corner, you see a beautiful painting and someone's captured by it. What face do they look at it? Do they smile? Do they go like, or no? It's they sort of go like, their face is like, it almost looks, if you took a picture of the face and showed it to somebody, it looks almost like scared, or it looks upset, or it looks like uncomfortable. It's sort of like you know what I mean? Like it's sort of like it's that crunched up face.
Yeah, I want to have that. It's an ache.
So it's almost like it's almost a negative emotion. Like the feeling of beauty is almost negative rather than positive. So why is it that people love it so much? Why is it that they chase it out? And that's where I think you also get this this stereotype of the
there's awe and wonder too.
Or what this is so the what is it that Rudolf Otto said? The mysterium tremendum et fascinans, the mystery that sort of fascinates you but also makes you tremble, or something like that. It's this, and he's using that to describe the numinous, the holy.
Yeah, and you could say that, religious people, like Christians in particular, compare that to what they, or at least the response to what they think is the reason behind beauty.
It's terrifying at the same time as being fascinating. You're like pulled in and pushed away at the same time. And I think if you think about the cliche of the suffering artist, the poet and the painter, and they have a terrible life, and they almost enjoy the suffering because it brings them better art. What is all of this telling us? It's telling us that there's something about beauty which is about negativity and disconnect and suffering. And maybe it's something about feeling the suffering. If somebody suffers enough, they get the feeling that there's a way the world is supposed to be that it's not.
Yeah.
And once you realize there's a way that the world is supposed to be, that gives you teleology. And once you get that teleology, you can start expressing the desire for that end in art. But I mean, that the fact that
that's totally true. And you can see, like, if you have that message in art, you can see how it furthers the beauty. But I mean, also at the same time, something can be like a great piece of art, like a great movie or a great piece of music, and not have any underlying profound meaning behind it. Something can just be like an action spectacle, like, that second Godzilla versus Kong movie. It's nothing but like monsters attacking each other and killing each other the whole movie. Nothing profound behind that, but it's entertaining. So you could call it beautiful from a certain perspective. Anything that's like aesthetically beautiful like that, like a hot woman or a nice car or any number of other things, or any types of artwork like poetry or a really good book or any other type of artwork or any genre of music, like you can compare that to, like, a book can have a profound and deep meaning and be really good, or it can just be a spectacle and maybe you like it for that reason. And there can be pros and cons to both, as is the case with any type of beauty or any other type of artwork that you can appreciate, right?
That is a negative emotion, I think, is interesting. That's an open question to me. By the way, I remember once I was sat, we were in Corinth, on top of this hill, sort of looking over the view of Corinth, and I said to my friend, I said, he's a Christian, and I said to him, oh, what do you make when you see like a beautiful view like this? Like, what's going on in your head? Trying to understand, someone who believes in God, what do they make of beauty and stuff? And he kind of just shut me down. He turned around and said, Alex, when you analyze something, you try to take possession of it. When you enjoy something, you let it take possession of you. And that just about shut me up. I was like,
That's not a bad response.
I was like, fair enough. Maybe I'm spending too much.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's like, it reminds me of what I was alluding to earlier in terms of how, if you like, you don't have to believe that, God did it, but at the same time, you don't have to also have this like materialistic, over analytical, scientific reductionist argument that this is how it happens and we have to figure out exactly logically and rationally why it happens. Or if you just like, allow yourself to appreciate the art and not analyze it, then maybe you can appreciate a deeper understanding of it. I totally get that. And again, there are pros and cons to both. It can totally be the case that, like, if you watch the commentaries and behind the scenes documentaries of movies, it can ruin the magic for you. But you can look at it from a different perspective too. Like, I let it allow me to appreciate something more. But at the same time, if you don't think it's worth it, if it's just the spectacle or so, then you don't need to do that too. But again, it depends on who the person is and in terms of what your reason behind why something is beautiful. And taste in art and what we define as beautiful are always subjective too, right?
Time doing the analysis. The moment you begin to ask the question, what's going on in my brain as I look at this painting, you're kind of doing the wrong thing.
Oh yeah, that's not going to help you experience the awe very much.
Yeah. So in other words, I do experience that. I don't know what to make of it. I think it would be a bit crude, as some like analytic philosophers do, to sort of say, well, this is an argument for the existence of God. But I understand what you're saying, that it seems to sort of point to something a bit sort of out there, a bit sort of newness.
If you were looking
A vaguely God-shaped thing
for evidence that you could experience that God is out there and looking for a relationship with you, this feels like one of those candidates.
I think music is the best there, because paintings are tricky because they're human-made.
Yeah, again, like, if you want to believe that, that's totally fine. There's actually nothing wrong with anyone believing that. Just don't tell other people to believe it. But again, in the same sense, you don't want to like reduce it to just being purely materialistically scientific either. But I mean, again, though, if it's like this vaguely God-shaped thing, that doesn't necessarily prove God's existence. But like, why does it really matter in terms of beauty anyway? Like I've said before, I prefer pragmatist atheist Richard Morty's answer to the question of whether gods exist. He says, "Who cares?" I agree.
And of course, like, music is human-made as well, but humans didn't make that effect.
No.
Humans didn't.
Yeah, like, beauty is related to sound, which is a part of nature, and it's not relying on our senses. Like, vision is not the same thing as, like, because it comes from our heads, it's not the same thing as sound. It's the same thing that we experience too. But like, there are sound vibrations in the universe. Maybe I'm making a bad comparison here, but still, I think you can probably see my point.
Didn't create that ability for, they discovered it, and there's a similar way in which that's true with like the way that colors are beautiful and put together. But paintings are so often representations of real world objects. But music,
Yeah, they don't have to be. And like music can be semi-autobiographical too, like pop songs about breakups and shit. But then again, people can play characters and tell stories. Like there are rappers who tell stories and stuff. And then there are other kinds of people who have profound messages in their songs, and their wide varieties of different artwork again, right?
is just this thing, which also, by the way, seems completely unnecessary. It seems that like there's no reason why we would need, as like evolved creatures, to develop this faculty for beauty.
There is. And there's
So for music,
of our brain now that responds to music differently than it does to speech, which means it's there for a reason. It's evolved really to recognize musical tones. There's a circuit that recognizes pitch.
That's really interesting. Again, that's why many philosophers throughout history have talked about the importance of beauty. And Nietzsche, as much as his in terms of his existentialist approach, he didn't necessarily tell you exactly how to live your life, but he basically, in more words than this, kind of said that the meaning of life is art, or appreciating art in some sense. Like that can be one of the most important meanings of life that you can choose if you're an existentialist.
There's one that recognizes intervals between the preceding note and the note you just heard. And most interestingly, there's a circuit that predicts the next note.
But do you think there's a survival benefit?
There must be.
But in like not just being able to tell different.
Like the brain circuitry being there doesn't necessarily mean that was the reason it evolved, though. That has happened before, but it's not necessarily always the reason. Like it could be a different reason, and you could be confusing cause for effect, and the effect could be the cause and stuff, as many people have talked about, like Noam Chomsky's prediction of Skinner's behaviorism in terms of stimulus and response, for example.
Pitches apart and stuff, but like
and of course, obviously, correlation does not always equal causation.
The ability to enjoy music,
enjoy and draw others together with you. Mothers singing lullabies to their babies before maybe they even could speak in a language. People getting together to mourn a disastrous situation or a loved one.
Okay,
or getting.
I can totally see what he's saying in terms of the profound power of music.
Together,
and how it can bond people together and contribute to the evolution of culture throughout history, for sure.
Sing a fight song.
Well, okay, maybe there is a reductionistic evolutionary explanation. I don't know. Maybe we should swap seats.
The one to ruin it, but no, there's some there, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have the same significance for us. Just as I don't think the fact that we can talk about these things means that they are less likely to be important to God. Our brains are intended to provide the substance by which we can achieve revelations that we wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah, I do wish I had a bit more interesting to say about from like an atheist side about the beauty stuff. I think the only way to do that would just to offer some kind of like reductionistic account of why the human brain has evolved to sort of be able to tell pictures apart, and some of them are more pleasing and others, and then we've like co-opted that to create, artificially stimulating things with like pianos and guitars. And I'm sure we could do that, but like you say, let's not waste time. I think most people probably are aware that kind of argument could be made. It's still a wonderful mystery, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that the key thing here throughout all of this is that like I'm not convinced by fine tuning that it's like a good reason to believe in God, but it's a great mystery. The Christian is
the fine tuning argument, like to oversimplify that. Due to the laws of physics and the way the universe was created in the Big Bang, the circumstances of the universe being constructed the way it is are so incredibly rare that it just had to have been created by God, which isn't a very good argument.
Convinced by suffering that there is no God and that this undermines everything, but it is a great and terrible mystery. The beauty is a great and perhaps terrible mystery. As well, the resurrection.
I like that line. Beauty is a great and terrible mystery. Like many profound and strong emotions that are evoked by profound art and effective artwork,
is a strange moment in history, like what happened on Easter morning. It's all an incredible mystery, and I think anybody who professes confidence in the knowledge of any of these things is either like a really, really talented physicist who actually just does know a ton about fine tuning and can probably like school both of us, fine. But when it comes to those sort of big consequential questions about the existence of God and stuff like that, and what beauty really means, man, like if somebody professes that kind of confidence on questions like that, then I immediately treat them with suspicion. Maybe that's one of my priors.
Yeah, that's interesting. That could be one of his biases. But yeah, that's interesting. I just wanted to talk about this because basically they really get into a fascinating conversation about how complex and nuanced beauty is, how subjective it can be, how related to science, and how much of it can be explained by science, how much of it can be a mystery and perhaps contradictory sometime, and whether that can be related to anything like, as they say, the numinous, whether that proves God or not. All of these are very interesting subjects in terms of just like them getting into the details of what beauty itself is, and like how powerfully it evokes our emotions in terms of the way that beauty is expressed through different mediums of artwork, like, writing, film, music, it's like painting, etc. Everything that evokes all of our senses, like you can think about all of them. So visual artwork and like smell, taste, and touch in terms of food, for example, something we're hearing like music. Again, like as I think as Alex O'Connor said, is wait, what did he say? I think I'm paraphrasing here, but as I think he said, beauty is a great and terrible mystery.